The career of Australia's highest flying prosecutor is under attack after a scathing judgment from the New South Wales Appeal Court, which threw out the murder conviction of Sydney man Gordon Wood over the 1995 death of his girlfriend, model Caroline Byrne. Criminal lawyers have called for a sweeping review of the cases overseen by Crown Prosecutor Mark Tedeschi. He may face a formal complaint over his conduct after the appeal judges found he relied on fiction and dangerous reasoning in the Wood case. Reporter Deborah Cornwall has investigated other cases where the prosecutor has found himself accused.
For more than 2 decades, Crown Prosecutor Mark Tedeschi has been the star performer at the most infamous murder trials in the country. From serial killer Ivan Milat and political assassin Phung No, to the highly controversial case of baby killer Kelly Lang.
Now something's happened to the child. Now is the time to tell us.
I don't know. Nothing happened. Nothing has happened to her.
With so many scalps on his belt, it's hardly surprising Mark Tedeschi is a polarising figure, the champion of crime victims and the prosecutor defence lawyers love to hate.
It seems to me he's a zealot who wants to go for the win.
Mr Tedeschi is a remarkable man.
The murder conviction of Gordon Wood, one-time chauffeur to the late celebrity stockbroker Rene Rivkin, was at the time one of his greatest triumphs.
It'll be one of the biggest wins you've had of your career, Mr Tedeschi.
Sorry, I can't comment.
But 2 weeks ago, Tedeschi's brilliant career suddenly hit the wall.
Thank you, because it's all a little bit overwhelming.
3 appeal court justices threw out the Wood conviction, ordering his release from jail immediately.
I have reviewed the whole of the evidence and have concluded that I am not satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that Gordon Wood murdered Caroline Byrne as charged.
The appeal judges demolished the prosecution case in which Wood had been accused of hurling his girlfriend, model Caroline Byrne, to her death at the Gap, Sydney's most notorious suicide spot. But the most savage criticism was reserved for Mr Tedeschi, the judges accusing the prosecutor of failing his most basic obligations to put the case fairly to the jury. Instead, they said, Mr Tedeschi had tried to bolster the Crown case by resorting to fiction, impermissible reasoning and innuendo, including rumours Wood had been in a sexual relationship with Rivkin.
Here we go.
And a series of unsophisticated experiments which were used to convince the jury Caroline Byrne could not have committed suicide. Caroline Byrne's father was so stunned by the judgment, it's only now he feels ready to comment.
I was hurt and shocked by the judge's comments because they were unfair. And I know, and I've got to know, Mark Tedeschi and his team, and I have the highest regard for them. They are beautiful. They are diligent. They are just a credit to the legal system.
There are many who criticise Mark Tedeschi. I think the average person needs to think about the track record of someone like Mark Tedeschi, the achievements and the ethics and integrity he's displayed over many decades.
Such was the ferocity of the attack against Mark Tedeschi. He now faces what may prove the most challenging battle of his career, having to defend himself to his peers. But Mark Tedeschi's detractors say he does have a history of complaints. In fact, he's the only prosecutor in the state who's ever faced a legal tribunal over allegations of professional misconduct. To date, though, not one complaint has ever stuck.
I must be relieved to have finally been exonerated after 13 very long years for me.
Former Ananda Marga member Tim Anderson pursued Mark Tedeschi for 12 years after a 1991 appeal court decision threw out Anderson's conviction for the murder of 3 people in the notorious Hilton Hotel bombing.
The Legal Aid Commission laid almost 50 complaints against Tedeschi to the Bar Council. None of it came to anything. And we see the result with the Gordon Wood case. 20 years on, the conduct hasn't changed at all. The pattern is the same.
Solicitor Paul Kenny says he was another Tedeschi casualty.
Yes, I would say that.
Kenny had been an undercover detective in the New South Wales drug squad when Internal Affairs Police charged him with conspiring to pervert the course of justice and demanding bribes from a heroin dealer. It was Tedeschi who led the prosecution.
If you're a police officer and you're charged, in effect you're finished. Your career's finished and you're ruined. I told them from day one what a terrible mistake they'd made. I totally destroyed my life.
The prosecution ultimately withdrew the charges. Tedeschi later castigated in a judicial inquiry, Justice John Nader noting he found it frightening that Tedeschi didn't even concede the possibility that Kenny was innocent, and his whole case had been based on the word of a couple of crooks. But again, the inquiry found no evidence Tedeschi had acted improperly.
I've read Gordon Wood's judgment by the Court of Criminal Appeal, the comments by the judges, and they're very similar to the situation that I was in. It seems to be a very similar course of conduct by the prosecutor. You're supposed to present credible witnesses.
The prosecutor is probably the loneliest job in court. He cannot give press conferences. His actions in court are the only way he gets to communicate. Defence lawyers are quite rightly passionate, very active in the media and can say what they like. In a sense, it's unfair that one side gets to say and do what they like and the other side has all the checks and balances on it. That's exactly what Mark Tedeschi has around him.
But Tim Anderson says Tedeschi's very combative advocacy style has been part of a dangerous trend among Crown prosecutors for decades.
In the 80s, there was a culture where people on the prosecution side wanted to see the gloves coming off a little bit more, and that's precisely what the judges have criticised, really. That abuse of power is what's being criticised now.
I'm looking at it from a perspective of someone who's had over a decade involvement in homicide investigations, the last 4 years as the commander of the homicide squad. I can only say that, thank God, that Mark Tedeschi has been a Crown prosecutor in the state of New South Wales.
Gordon Wood's story is now the target of a major bidding war between the TV networks.
There's so many people in there who don't have any family, whose friends have dropped them and who can't afford lawyers.
But after just 2 weeks as a free man, Gordon Wood has already declared he has a new purpose in life, as the champion and poster boy for victims of injustice.
I don't care what Gordon Wood's doing or where he is. Diligent men and women who know more about this case than anyone. They have told my family and I to our faces, your daughter did not commit suicide. Your daughter was murdered. The jury got it right. The judge got it wrong.
Deborah Cornwall there.